Thank you very much, Maria. We live in existential times, and that's why we are emotional. It's okay. It's okay because it's hard to be alive and it's hard to decide to choose life. So thank you very much for your work. And again, an applause, please, for Maria. It was an amazing presentation. As you can see, our challenges are enormous. And the only possibility we have to face them is collectively. Or not? Yes. So now we're going to have this conversation, and I would like to thank again to be here representing my country in this session. But to start, I would like to share with you a great lesson that a Mapuche friend taught me. Mapuche is a First Nation of this territory. Their name means people from earth. He told me that when you arrive to a meeting, if you want to build trust, you have to say your name and where you come from, because you are your ancestors and your territory. So my name is Paloma Paz. I was born in Costa Rica, and I'm a Chilean citizen. And so I feel that my name, Paloma Paz, and my territory have brought me here to work for the planet and to talk to you. I would like to start with you, Frederic. 12 years ago, it looks like the very past, you created a platform for journalists dedicated to water. So now it's obvious why water, but in that time, why water?
Yeah, so 12 years ago, we started a network of journalists in Africa called Water Journalists Africa to report about water, spread across 50 countries. So then, we realized that the stories of water were hidden in newspapers. So you would see them on page 4, on page 7, on page 9, and you wouldn't see them on page 1. And so you ask a question, why? Remember, we depend on water. And as we say, water is life. But we don't see these stories in the newspaper. And we would see stories of the war, stories of, politics, but you don't see stories about water. That's what, kind of took our hearts to make sure that we report about water. And we don't report about water as a few journalists, but as a network of journalists spread across 50 countries in Africa. And when you look back now, we are about 1,500 journalists writing about water. But a story about water is not just water on the top. It's also how it's affected by climate change. How, wildlife would be affected if they don't get water. Yeah.
Now, we are in a difficult situation, and we need public and individual actions. But as you described, Maria, freedom and democracy that have traditionally been the unquestioned paradigms of our times, today, however, we see them being undermined all the time. They are not the obvious paradigm to adopt. In this context, how do you see, Minna, that governments of the world are really tackling the freedom of press, and how are they working for putting this power for the planet?
Muchas gracias, buenos días.
Great Spanish.
Sí, quería empezar con algunas palabras en español.
Well, thank you very much. I just wanted to start with some words in Spanish. I was here in Chile 20 years ago.
In English. Thank you for the question. I mean, honestly, on this very important day, which also Maria pointed out, that we are in such crisis in all the ways. And we are gathered here. Of course, this already is a sign that we come together, we talk about it. It is the day also to tribute the truth tellers, the journalists, because the factual-based information and everything coming from there, we have seen it with the discussions on global warming. We still see it. Also in my country, in Estonia, this is still put under the question of whether there is any human action in there. So this is a constant fight. But also from the government side, everybody has to work together who are like-minded. Therefore, I'm also happy to represent today the Media Freedom Coalition, which consists of 50 countries, 50 governments, and we are co-chairing it currently with Germany. But also, it is not governments alone who can do it. So therefore, we need the journalists who are also part of the Media Freedom Coalition. We need the civil society. We have the consultative network comprising of great civil society organizations. And we have also the high-level legal panel of experts, so the legal experts who are dealing with various issues also on accountability. So I think none of us can do it alone. I'm a full believer in multilateralism. I've spent most of my career representing Estonia at the United Nations. And when I was just there a month ago, last time in New York, I saw that we are in deep crisis because the topics we were able to speak about even 10 or 15 years ago, we are not even able to speak about anymore. So I think, therefore, the kind of understanding also of governments that they have to work themselves first to make sure that the people are heard in their countries, that the journalists can speak freely, I think that's where it starts. And then you move on. And of course, today also the list of Press Freedom Index was published again. And Estonia, I'm very happy we are on the 6th place in the world. It is a question for a country which has lived under occupation and totalitarian regime for a very long time. I think this is, a tribute that we have done things right. But I think, this is the case that when we want to still believe in this multilateralism and see that we will have anything to achieve, we have to continue also in the United Nations and everywhere where different partners are present. Thank you.
Minna, is multilateralism enough in front of this power that Maria describes in her speech? Because it looks like the big techs really owns the world, and maybe countries are not strong enough. What do you think, and how can we make it stronger?
As said, I think the feeling I got from my last visit to the UN and to the General Assembly, we are not in a good place amongst countries. But I think also, do we have a choice? I don't think we have a choice. So, at the same time, as said, this kind of coalitions, like-minded coalition, like the Media Freedom Coalition, we have a Freedom Online Coalition, which Estonia is going to chair next year. I think these are the places where there are enough countries, and that's why, of course, we want more countries to come in and join these coalitions. Then you have also the civil society, which keeps us also under accountability, and also we have the journalists, and therefore I think, everything said by Maria, I cannot subscribe enough. If it's enough, no, it's not enough. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all these wars at the moment which were mentioned. It's not enough. But honestly, I'm an optimist. So in that sense, I think there will be better times. And I think when also countries will see how much one gains when the people are free, when they can do whatever they want, how much economic prosperity it brings, we just have to keep on going.
Definitely. Gael, you are a very famous person, and you have used your influence to work for the planet, because it looks like we need the planet coalition urgently. Why and when did you decide to use your own personal power to work for the planet?
Bueno, sí, soy Gael García Bernal.
Yes, I am Gael García Bernal. I come from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. Let's get started in that sense.
This is el lema, ¿no? The motto is prensa para el planeta, ¿no? Press for the planet. And basically,
So the motto is press for the planet.
I mean, we have to matizar, no sé cómo es esa palabra, I don't know how to say that word in English, but we need to, soften certain terms because not everything is for the planet. You know, there can't be oil industries for the planet, no? But everything else needs to kind of incorporate the emergency that we're living. Because this emergency is completely and absolutely transversal and affects us all, of course, but at the same time, everything we do has to do with this emergency, no? Everything, absolutely. So, in a way, I must say I never thought the pathway as how am I going to use, the open mic in order to say this. I never thought it that way. My feeling or my first intention in dealing with the planet and talking about it is because I am a person and I am alive and I have kids, and that's when my first kind of stronger angst started to come. I was also born I was kind of the first generation that as kids we were talked about ecology, ecology and the upcoming disaster. When I was a kid, we were talking about that. My parents didn't get that information, but I did. So it was let's say, a more symptomatic sort of pathway into this, and it's not only about having the microphone open in order to say things. It's also to incorporate it in the work that I do, and to do work around that. So I decided to put my hands in the mud and do some documentaries about this. Every film I do incorporates not only in the making of the film, but also whatever we talk about in the film. I always try to find a connection with this emergency as well, and it has become my, I'd say my main occupation now. Every day thinking about how, why, what can I do, what can we do. And this has led me to many, many wonderful things as well. So we started off in a very kind of sad note, kind of depressing in a way. You see the facts, you see the figures, it is terrible. But that's the beginning as well. That's the beginning. You need to know that in order to later, little by little, find the hope, the happiness. And amongst the many things that I found whilst doing this, I've made new friends. I've made families as well. I've made, I don't know, it has become a reason for me to, in these existential times that we're living in, it has become a main objective in my life now. And I feel very glad that I have something to hold on to, because if not, I would just stay in the depressing state, which we all feel naturally, not only rationally, but because we are biological beings that we hear the emergency in our insides. It's not only that we see the charts, we see how the global warming has increased. It's not only that, it's we feel it biologically. There's something there. The anxiety we feel is that calling. It's definitely that calling, and it's important to listen to it. It's a very fine art, though, and not easy, but it gives you a lot of rewards.
I definitely agree. At least we are in a terrible situation, but we share a purpose, which is a good thing, no? So a lot of people fight to find a purpose. This is a very important purpose. Maria, you mentioned a lot of cases of how difficult it is to fight against, finally, economic things. So far, we have not recognized the value of nature in our economic system. That's one of the main problems, and we still used to lose the conversation and the debate on taking care of the environment, because all the time is this conversation, especially for countries like us, like you have to grow, you need to develop, so you have to go through nature to get it, no? But we could say that, I think we share it, the value of nature is priceless, because does life has any price, finally, no? Could you share with us what inspires you specifically in your work for the planet, in your environmental coverings?
Yes, so hope. Well, first of all, I loved what you said, Gael, because in the end, I actually think we have to embrace our fears. And that is the starting point of hope. When you talk about the UN and governments, you know, you have to think the worst case scenario already, and what are you going to do from it? In Rappler, our most successful community building effort is climate change. It's a project called Project Agos. The Philippines has an average of 20 typhoons every year. That was before things got really bad. And 2 days ago, our government shut down some schools because our temperature hit 53 degrees Celsius. 53 degrees Celsius. And then, of course, right before that, you saw the floods in Dubai. It's really cold here in Santiago for a tropical baby. So what I will say is that we all know, we need more artists, more focus, more attention to look at and to actually fight the negative emotions that social media pulls up, because you can inspire, because we actually have empathy, right? Africa is going through so much. So in terms of Rappler, what we did was we built a tech platform. We built it for the government, handed it to the government in 2015. It was called Project Agos. When a typhoon or a disaster happens, everyone on social media, and this was when social media's algorithms weren't as bad as they are today, could actually give information, can ask for help. And then the National Disaster Council, everyone could see it because all the news groups and our palace cooperated. And who sends help in the middle of a flood? The Red Cross had 14,000 volunteers. The person who lived next door could get the pregnant woman away from the roof of her house because the flood hit it, right? It comes back to community. How are we going to face these existential challenges? And these are not numbers. This is reality. And reality not just for the environment, but I'm going to come back to you and tell you, it is reality for journalists. Because if you do not have the facts, you're never going to be able to align people. It's hard to govern today. And I have to say kudos to Estonia for its data privacy, the way it has implemented data privacy. Because in Estonia, if you're Estonian, if someone looks at your driver's license, you're going to get notified. It goes back to so it goes back to that. So let me end it with the same thing, which is we've all signed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right? I am the vice chair of the Internet Governance Forum, which is working with the UN. We pull civil society together. I would really push all of us to confront what is right in front of us, to admit that we're standing on rubble so that we can begin to build. Please push faster. You know, don't let it atrophy. We don't have time. Sorry.
Thank you, Maria. That drives me to the next question for you, Minna, because your country is really an example of a good digital government. That's something that it is too hard by now for many governments around the world. You have worked on the bright side of technology, but you also know how harmful social media has been for democracy and environment. So do you think we can use technological tools to protect journalism and to protect the planet? How could it work?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. In that sense, in Estonia, digital is a lifestyle. And thank you also for pointing out there's always the downside of cyber attacks, all other things that can happen if everybody lives their lives online. And we really have made our best to make sure that technology works for democracy and not against it. And we have also been chairing various groups also under the Summit for Democracy and elsewhere. But I think there is also a big gap. You cannot just insert technology somewhere and then hope that it would take care of some problems or change them, because then it might get actually worse. And I think if Estonia wouldn't have invested so much into making the country democratic and rule of law based and all the human rights respected, I think it would be very difficult that we would have this digital society, because people believe in all of these solutions and they trust the government. So I think if you do not trust the government or you have some other questions about it, it might not work. But at the same time, I think we need to look at all different options to save the planet. And if there are ways that also, and I know that there are various initiatives already which have been also spoken about today on information integrity and so on. So I think we will be one of the front runners there. So I think we definitely embrace it, but I think also just planting it somewhere might not work. Thank you.
Frederic, I heard a talk from you in the past, and you said climate change is not a conversation about the big picture. It's a conversation about individual stories. Can you share with us this experience of little stories?
Yeah. Well, when we cover climate change and we focus on the bigger picture, we usually tend to lose the story. Because, I'll give you an example. You talked about nature. If you read about nature and the services that it provides and quantified that in money, it would be twice the GDP of the world. It's a lot of money. And when we write about stories of politics, and climate change, and we forget to write about the small stories of, for example, nature. And looking at, for example, the amphibians, the pollinators, the trees, and stuff like that we see in the forest, but we don't pay attention to, we lose the story. And also, when we don't pay attention to individual stories of communities, how climate change has affected an individual person, we lose the story, because we think that we have all faced the same effect. But what we do, we make sure that we look for the small stories that can tell a bigger picture of the effects. Yeah.
Gael, you also work with little stories or personal stories of climate change in your different documentaries. But for me, is a big question. How do you choose your battles? Because in this context, we have so many of them, and we need to choose the perfect story to change someone's idea of what is happening. So how do you do that?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like having a baby. It's like there's never the right moment. Every story is a good story. It's because. For example, in these documentaries, I'll tell one of them. We went to a region in the Gulf of Mexico called Tabasco. And this is a very, it should be a rich, incredibly rich region, because it is the hub of the petrochemical industries in Mexico. Obviously, it is a tropical place. It is full of life, but the petrochemical industry has completely intervened the area. And many notions of progress, from the past, from the early 20th century, established that that all this this jungle, this green forest had to be put down because it's not useless. It's useless as it is. We have to make use of it. We have to exploit it. No, so they put in ganadería, cows, and they put in certain types of agriculture as well that were very harmful to the land and everything. So historically, this place has been incredibly intervened by the industry and by progress, and but in Mexico we have something called La Reforma Agraria, which allows people to own their land in different ways, in different models. And we went to a place where it is a terreno ejidal. I don't know how to say that. It's close to a communal sort of use of land. That it was so close to the sea, and there was a refinery. Refinery. Sorry, it was built very close, and the salt water came in from the sea, and completely, swallowed the agricultural land. So that land became useless now. Nothing grew there except one plant, which is el mangle, mangrove, a mangrove plant. There are many different types of mangrove plants, but there is three very basic one, which is white, black, and gray. That's the way that they define them, no? And this community, they said, let's plant the only thing that grows here. Let's plant mangroves. And there was a whole discussion because they were completely depressed and very sad with, facing the emergency. But they said, okay, let's try planting this. But what use are we going to get from them? What is it? We're not going to get any subsidies for anything. We're not going to. I don't know. We cannot do anything with this. And one of them of this family started to say, okay, maybe we can use. We're going to make the land better, but at the same time we're going to use this as wooden kind of material. No, we're going to use the wood, the excellent for wood. And he started to investigate. He started to inform himself, and started to plant the mangroves. And as he says, he started to fall in love with the plant. He started to fall in love with the plant because all of a sudden he was nurturing life. He saw how all the life that hadn't existed there before in the agricultural times now came back. All the water started to become a place where all the fishes were put in their. Sorry, my English is so bad. It's their eggs. Started to. Many different birds started to come. Many different mammals as well, reptiles, amphibians, and then it started to become an incredible joy of life there. And they were protecting the lands that were close by as well from not getting inundated, from not getting flooding from the ocean. And so they were reverting everything with a narrative that didn't exist before, with something that was considered useless, and they started to change it into something very positive. But especially, this family started to give meaning to this. They started to fall in love with the plant. If you fall in love with a plant, you don't cut it down. If you put a meaning to it, you don't cut it, you don't destroy it, you defend it. And this is one of the main examples of the thousands of stories that exist of a very personal, narrative of confronting the destruction and at the same time immediately finding a solution. But still being aware that this can happen, being aware and trying to spread the word, that this can happen. So this story is, for example, one of them.
Amazing story. We're not here because we speak a very good English.
Sí,
Gael, please.
No sé por qué.
We can see this.
I don't know why my English is so rusty.
beautiful ecosystem and very complex one, and really they can give us a lot of ecosystem services. So one of my favorites, you touched my heart with that story. Well, you mentioned something very important, to fall in love with a plant. It looks like a mad person speaking, you know, because you don't fall in love with a plant. But we are in a moment where maybe we need to fall in love with a plant, with an animal, and even with a river. I mean, we are in a different, or we need a different consciousness, more like native people consciousness, to make this huge change that is calling. So I would like to take you to the last part of our panel, because my boss is going to ask me for that. And as you know, and we have heard here, humanity is an interconnected network. We need our community. This egoist or selfish illusion it is an illusion. We need the community. We need the community to grow and prosper. Nature is also an interconnected system that needs every part to grow and rebirth, like the story you have told us. What can we do to create and strengthen this global network of journalists that really work for the planet, to fight this feeling of loneliness that you have felt, no, Maria, because this is a huge task. We have a lot of forces against. We need to do it now. We have to protect the environment, but we feel lonely. So how do you think we can build this new network of collaboration, this community?
I actually think environment is showing the way. Climate activists are showing the way for how we can protect journalists, right? Which is a whole of society approach. But the right answer, at least for me, in something like that is, tech has pushed us to always look at numbers. So it's making the numbers empathetic, if that makes sense. Making the numbers, turning people into, turning plants, turning all of us, taking those numbers that left brain will give you and then turning them into emotions that your right brain can act on. And an easy one, I talked to you about a very successful climate change initiative, but our goal sets clear goals. Our goal in that was to bring the number of deaths for every typhoon into double digit. In fact, the hashtag was #0casualty. And in the time that it was alive, it went from 2013 all the way until 2017, when then President Duterte killed it. But in that time that it was alive, we went from thousands killed per typhoon to less than 10, right? Goals, clear, concrete goals. You need to get the artists and the narratives, because they're being used to our dark side right now on the tech. We need to harness that for the good side and remind us, actually, who wants to die? Nobody wants it. If you have kids, you have to actually jump in. So it's a whole of society approach. You mentioned this, but we've done this. This is the way we fight back. I'm so very, very tired of being a punching bag. No one wants to be a punching bag, but we are all punching bags of power and money if we do not act.
Go. Thank you. If I just may add, thank you. In that sense, also from the perspective of the Media Freedom Coalition, which I mentioned before, I mean, we know that the journalists covering environmental issues are the most targeted and killed after the ones covering wars.
Especially in Latin America.
Exactly. So this shows also for the Media Freedom Coalition that we actually have to help all journalists who are threatened by telling the truth. So this has been, we do not say that this topic or this topic. They are all of them. And therefore, we have also put in place different emergency visa and also residency permit mechanisms to make sure that journalists can continue their work. And that's the most important part also with the residency permits, that if they have to leave the country they've been working, they can come to Estonia, to another country, and they can continue the work of covering that, because this is the utmost of helping press freedom all over. Thank you.
Thank you, Minna.
Yeah. I wanted to add on to what she said. You realize that environmental journalists are writing stories about transboundary resources, like climate change. It is a transboundary resource. Forests, for example, Amazonia, River Nile, these are transboundary resources. And we fail to promote collaborative journalism. If, for example, I'm not able to tell the story from my own country, I can collaborate with another journalist in another country. So he tells the story. I feed him with information. It's not about owning the byline, but it's about the information, because I want my community to take informed decisions. I want to make sure something is done. So then I have the story done by another journalist who I have helped. So I strongly believe that it is important to support collaborative journalism, but also train. Not so many journalists know about collaborative journalism. They think it's just about writing a story with another person. It's not enough. You need skills of managing. You see, there should be someone to manage, to bring the stories together. The skills of, for example, pitching, to make sure you get grants, that you win bigger funds to take on certain stories. Yeah.
Gael, you finish.
You have responsibility. Okay.
What a responsibility you gave me.
Like 3 points, very simple. So we're talking about the loneliness, no? About how you feel whenever you're facing something that feels even bigger, a bit supraliminal, bigger than the understanding in a way. And the way to put it into organize it into a calm mode and start to work around it, as an actor, but as a person that is worried about it, is first of all, from my immediate environment, I start to talk about it, and I start to put my hands and put my body into it, with every little thing. We know that we're not the main responsibles of climate change. We are not. People are not. It is the big industries. It is the system. But little by little, if we start to incorporate that, something starts to flourish and new perspectives start to occur, and you start to immediately not feel alone as well. The second part would be to, after this organization or this community starts to build up, with your neighbors or with whoever, with your families, with every person that you talk to, then you can start to ask for a change and demand a change and involve yourself in the bigger picture of things. Again, the system is definitely not working well for the planet right now, and we need all angles in order to change that and to tackle that. And we can engage in that way in many, many, many different shapes and forms. And the third one, which is the more complicated one, I must say, is to hear and to accept and incorporate the other rationale, what would it be, the right side of the brain? the other place where you can connect with different narratives that existed or that do not exist right now, and that all of a sudden you find it for yourself. And I'm going to give an example. Sometimes with religion, religion is very dogmatic, no, and tells you what you have to You can go through that way, but isn't it better to discover it yourself? Isn't it better to make an understanding of that, your own personal understanding of that, and create that? Well, this is also what needs to happen. This is also what needs to happen in order to feel that we are connected and that we are able to change things. And really, the hope immediately comes and appears, because the solitude and the loneliness, it is one of the first symptoms. But immediately, the hope and the community starts to make you incredibly happy, accompanied, and with much more strength than ever before.
I agree. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we don't have 9 more hours to have this conversation. I have like 3,000 more questions for you, but maybe we can have a coffee then. Thank you very much for hearing this panel. Definitely we need a lot of action from journalists, governments, please, and a coordinated action to change the direction. So, Leonor, it's your turn.
My dear, thank you so much for all of you for this beautiful and important debate. As Mr. Salgado said, we do all need to work together to make the change happen. Thank you to each and one of you.
Gracias.
Well, let's give him a strong round of applause, please. We are going to move out to our breakout sessions, everyone. Please follow the signs for the different rooms and ask the volunteers for the QR codes for the program so you can identify your session. And don't forget to always bring your interpretation devices. And note that in the program, there's a change of schedule. You might want to check that on the website. Thank you.